One of my favorite institutions when I was a kid was the Boy Scouts of America. The Boy Scouts taught so many valuable skills with their various camp activities and really basic survival training. And their motto? Be prepared. Simple, significant, be prepared. Moving forward in this uncertainty, I think that might be some good advice for us. As we continue in this current circumstance of quarantine and safe at home, we're moving now toward what is being called the reopening of our society, the reopening of our economy, in phases, of course. I have to tell you, this is a welcome state to be in, isn't it? I can't wait to get back to meeting in person as a church family. But honestly, there are so many questions. What will things be like? I keep hearing people talk about yet another new normal. Will people be comfortable being together around other people? Will inflation hit? Will prices go through the roof as businesses try to recover from this forced closure that they've been under? Will there be enough meat and bread and flour? I'm reminded of an old song. Some of the lyrics go like this: there's a shortage on corn, and there's a shortage on wheat. There's a shortage on beans. We've got a shortage on meat. Things that we needed, we just can't hardly buy. Soon we'll be asking if we're all going to die. Oh, by the way, this song was from 1975. 1975. It goes on, though. But I know a great thing that there's no shortage of. There's no shortage on God's mercy. There's no shortage on God's love. In uncertain times, that seems to be some solid ground, doesn't it? God's mercy, God's love. No matter what else is going on around us, there is something we can depend on. That kind of sounds like the big picture that we've been focusing our attention on for the last several weeks, doesn't it? Sounds like a solid foundation to face whatever it is that we're going to face. In the closing section of his letter to the Ephesians, chapter 6, Paul discusses a matter of notable importance, the matter of being prepared to face the spiritual battles that we encounter as Christians, whether it's a coronavirus or a shattered economy or quarantine-related loneliness. Whatever the battle, the enemy wants to use our circumstances to destroy our faith. In that sense, it is a spiritual battle. Well, Paul instructs the Christians at Ephesus, and by extension, he instructs us, to put on the armor of God. Let me read from Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 and 11. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Well, this passage that goes on, it's a beautiful metaphor of the different pieces of armor that a soldier might wear in battle. Look at verses 14 through 17. Stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Do you see how that's kind of a metaphor? All the different types of armor that a soldier would wear. Paul is instructing and using a metaphor of the different aspects of the Christian life to fulfill that role of that armor. Well, in the uncertainty of the situation that we're in, this anxiety, even the shortages, I want to point you to verse 15 and say with the Boy Scouts, be prepared. Verse 15, having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Shod your feet. Shoes. That's the foundation of armor. And there are two ideas that emerge from this term used for shod. The first idea is the covering of the foot, obviously. Often in those days, the foot would have the wrapping, but in those days, there might be some nails attached or some other type of object attached to provide traction so that they could have firm traction and hold firm there. The second idea in this term is the idea of that protective shield that soldiers would wear wrapped around the ankle and the lower leg. You know, you've seen it. They all wore them. They made them look like they had these big, giant, muscular calves, right? Usually made of brass. They were called greaves, Greaves, greaves. That provided a solid defense against attack. So we have these two different ideas. First of all, just the covering for the foot with the traction, and then the protective wear around the lower leg and ankle called the greaves. Well, let's consider both for a second. First of all, let's talk about that, just the covering for the foot with the traction. The feet, our feet are what we use as we walk on the path from here to tomorrow. And that path, as we've said, is an uncertain path. And so we're probably wise to take one step at a time, and traction is so badly needed. A number of years ago, singer-songwriter friend named Billy Sprague lost his fiancée in a car accident, just not long at all before they were actually scheduled to be married. Billy was crushed, absolutely, as you might imagine, devastated. He told me how he would wake up in the morning and by his will, he would just tell himself, take one foot, put it on the floor. Take the other foot, put it on the floor. One foot, kind of that left foot, right foot. Take one foot and take a step. And a number of years later, a few years later, it took him a while to kind of regather and start writing music. But a few years later, he wrote a song, and that song was called Press On. And it articulated how important it was during that time that he would just tell himself to put a foot on the floor. Let me read you some of the lyrics of that song. In a silence so black that I wished for the blues, every desperate prayer seemed like heaven refused. Some days I found faith just meant tying my shoes. It was all I could do to press on. Press on, mi amigo. Press on, mon ami. Walk on in the face of the mystery. Though the night hides the light, through the darkness till dawn, tie your shoes, my friend, and press on. Isn't that a great idea? A great idea of just putting those shoes on to get the next step on in the process. And we may need to be doing some of that pressing on in these days ahead. Then there is that brass protective shield, the second idea that emerges from this term, shod your feet. That brass protective shield, the greaves that the soldier wore. Think of a warrior on horseback. The calf and lower leg would be vulnerable to attack. Well, the greaves provided the necessary protection from enemies. So we have these two ideas that Paul gives us, shod your feet. But what does Paul suggest here for our feet? What does he suggest that we shod our feet with? For getting from here to tomorrow, for protection from enemy attack? Preparation of the gospel of peace. Preparation of the gospel of peace. I can face tomorrow secure in the gospel. There's no shortage of God's mercy. There's no shortage of God's love. I have that peace that passes understanding that we've been talking about. And so I can face whatever the enemy wants to throw at me tomorrow. There's one more old song that kind of comes to my mind as we get ready to sort of reopen culture and society and the economy and, yes, even church. Another old song that comes to my mind. I don't know about tomorrow, but I know who holds my hand. I will shod my feet with the preparedness of the gospel of peace. Be at peace, my friends. God bless you.